3 of Watercolours for Beginners. We're going to be experimenting with watercolour mediums in this tutorial. These are materials you can use alongside your watercolour paint to create some unusual effects. I'm going to show you how to use masking fluid, rock salt and cling film with your watercolour painting. The salt and the cling film are available from supermarkets. I'll drop a link in the description for where to buy the masking fluid. So you can see I've got my usual setup for painting. If you need help with how to start, then check out parts 1 and 2 of this tutorial series. So let's begin with taping the page into 6 sections. And in the first section, paint a simple flat wash. Leave it to dry and I'll explain what we're going to use it for a bit later on. So in our first experiment, we'll look at the masking fluid. Masking fluid is a liquid latex, which, when you apply it to the paper and leave it to dry, creates a barrier between the paper and the paint. Then it's peeled off to reveal the paper underneath. It's really effective for preserving the white of the paper in your painting. I use it when I'm painting animals because it's great for things like whiskers, highlights in the fur, and especially the reflection in the eyes. Just pour a small amount out of the bottle into the plastic palette. Because it's on the plastic, it will just peel off when it's dry. It does dry very fast, and often I've found that it has dried and clogged a brush before I've finished using it. So my solution to this is silicone tools. These are usually used to shape and sculpt clay, but I've found them to be the best tool to use for the masking fluid. So when the masking fluid dries on the silicone tool, it just peels off and you're ready to carry on. Use the silicone tools to dip into the fluid and then apply to the page. The different shaped tools will make different marks, so just try them all out. You can apply masking fluid over the top of painted paper as well. This is why we made a flat wash earlier. Make sure it's completely dry and then apply the masking fluid onto the wash. I'm going to draw a little tree shape. This needs to completely dry before we do any more painting over it, so let's move on to the next experiment and come back to this later. So next we're going to use salt. I've got an ordinary salt mill that you can buy from the supermarket. When you add the salt to the wet paint, it absorbs the water, leaving some interesting patterns behind. Let's have a go. Start with the wet in wet technique. I'm putting a variegated wash down so I can demonstrate a light and dark colour. You have to get your timing right before putting the salt onto the paint. If it's too wet, it won't absorb enough moisture to make a pattern. If it's too dry, then nothing will happen. You're looking for your page to have a slight sheen to it and no puddles. I'm going to use the large grain of salt first, and I'm going to just drop them onto the 2 colours. So in the other section, I'm now going to paint a gradient wash, and then I'm going to use the salt from the mill to cover it in fine salt grains. Okay, so let's leave that one to dry completely. Make sure you get rid of any excess salt around the rest of the page. So now we're going to use the cling film. It seems a little bit odd, but trust me, it looks great. I'm just starting with a basic wash using the wet and wet technique, and then taking a piece of cling film and placing it onto the wet paint. Move it around on the page until you're happy with the look. I've bunched it up to make a smaller texture, but you should try different ways to see if you like the way it looks. We need to leave them to dry for as long as possible, so let's come back to our masking fluid sections. You can test if it's dried by looking at the colour. It should have gone a dark yellow and slightly transparent, or by touch. It shouldn't come off on your skin. I'll I'll start with the section where I put the masking fluid over the top of the yellow paint. I'm going to put a darker colour over the top, so just paint it as you would normally. So to finish off this experiments page, I'll just paint another variegated wash over the other section of the masking fluid. Okay, so all we have to do now is make sure everything's totally dry, and once it is, just peel off the cling film, brush away the salt, and when it comes to the masking fluid, just gently rub it and it should peel away. Gently remove the masking tape and write down what mediums you used on each section. So let's have a look at the results. The masking fluid is a winner for me. I use it in most of my paintings. The large grains of salt haven't worked very well here. This might have been because there was too much or too little water on the page. And it hasn't shown up very well on the lighter paint. The fine grains, however, have worked great. I prefer using the salt this way for my paintings, especially when trying to create fur texture. I did 2 experiments with the cling film and tried to make different shapes, but they both ended up looking quite similar. I do, however, really like how there's light, mid and dark parts to it, so I'd probably use this in a landscape or to make flowers or for an abstract background. Well, I hope you enjoyed watching me test out some unusual materials. If you're enjoying my tutorials, subscribe to the channel to keep up to date. Thanks everyone, and I'll see you next time.